Rightio. So, it's the middle of the night and it is Saturday night. So let me just make sure that's off. Yeah, I don't want that item. So, the long and short is that when I was leaving work, I made quite a lot of videos which I never ended up releasing, where I was talking about elements of the racing industry. But I never ended up releasing them, a lot of them in the end, because they were seriously like day after day after day of rant, not just, oh yeah, of kind of like rants about everything that was going on. And part of the reason why I didn't end up uploading them was to do with the camera speed of my phone. I got really behind with everything because it was taking so long to upload everything, and I was making so many videos. I was doing an hour's of filming a day, and at least, and I just got really behind, and I can't remember why I got so behind actually, but anyway, I did get so behind. And then in an effort to catch up, I ended up just uploading the stuff which was the more interesting locations and really cutting out most of the stuff where I was talking about leaving work. Now, the reason why I'm making this now is, well, a few reasons. It's been now about 6 weeks since I left, and I'm I don't even know how to put words into this. I'm definitely still suffering like the repercussions of leaving. Now, I want to try and talk about the racing industry a little bit. I don't think I'll ever go back and upload all the stuff which I didn't upload, because to do so now, I might do at some point in time, but you know, it's like, well, you know, I don't think there's any point, really. It's probably better if I just try and talk about it from a more rounded perspective. Not just try and talk about it in a way which people can understand better. Because if you haven't worked in horse racing, you are not going to know. You're not going to get it. It might come across in some of my videos like as though I'm just like, well, I don't know. I don't really care how I come. You know, I don't care. But what I want to try and do here is just explain a bit about the racing industry and the way that they manipulate and control you to fit the mold that they expect for you to be. It's an industry that is absolutely steeped in high-level mind control over the staff members, and there's a hierarchy. It's a higher. Oh, I can't even say the word hierarchy. Yeah, there's a hierarchy basically, and if you want to work in racing, you are basically expected to shut up and put up. This is all, of course, unspoken. Anyhow, what I'll do is I've written a few notes. Like, it's nothing major. It is just literally like a few scribbles. Because sometimes when filming, like, mind blanks. So I thought I'll just write a few notes. And I'll tell you what also has sparked this combination between just how I feel, like adapting to life away from the racing industry, and I have to write a talk for college about mind control. I was going to talk about mind control. It's the ethics, the subject which I've got to do the talk for, and I want to do about mind control. It's just I'm finding it a little bit difficult to get the flow going because mind control is such a huge subject. So this is partly because I wanted to talk about this on video, and it's partly just a little bit of an experiment to see if I might do my talk in ethics from the perspective of the racing industry, seeing as, you know, it's so relevant to my life, and what better to talk about than something which basically is my life. It's there. Right? They say know your subject. And whilst, of course, I can do that with mind control as a whole, but I mean, it's a huge subject. And I'm just finding it a little bit difficult to get my head around, breaking it down into a sizable matter which isn't going to blow the minds of my audience. Like, it's one thing to go and talk about mind control issues with people who at least have some awareness of it all. It's like a bit of a tightrope, isn't it? I've got no problem with going in there and talking about it all. But what I don't really want to do is alienate my tutor by going in there and like talking about black ops and stuff too much. The other thing is, like, to do it that way, I need to talk about, I can only talk about stuff which has been proven, which limits things a bit, because let's face it, a lot of this stuff, short of going into HARP and yes, there's so much out there which we can prove, but from the perspective which I wanted to take things from, it really was more to do with your trauma-based mind control, which, yes, there's a lot out there proven, but it just feels like such a huge task to try and break it down into 10 minutes, into cue cards, which I can, like, because I can't even write this speech, I've got to just do it. So I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed by the subject matter. So this is in part as well to see if I don't manage to get my head together with doing it from that angle, I might instead do it and link it into the racing industry. I haven't decided yet, and this was never meant to be a 7-minute intro about why I'm doing this. Maybe I should just cut now. But anyway, now I've discovered on YouTube that you can like trim your work down. This might all get trimmed. So I'm going to talk about racing, horse racing. But not from the perspective of the horses. This is going to be about the perspective of the staff. And let's see if we can try and get this done quite quickly without it turning into like 6 hours. It's not going to turn into 6 hours. Okay, so I ended up in the racing industry completely by accident. And I was quite unusual because in racing, in horse racing, you tend to have most people that end up in racing at 16 years old, and you have a lot of young lads. Well, actually, there's usually a mixture between young girls who want to be grooms. They want to be grooms. That's what they want to do. They maybe have had a parent that's into horse racing, and they have probably grown up going to the races, seeing the lead up before they run, and they obviously have like ridden or wanted to ride, because they have. If you want to work in racing, you have to go to racing school if you're below 18. And so most people that work in racing have got in that way. They start at 16 years old. The yard's like that because they can indoctrinate them as school leavers. Most of these kids haven't worked anywhere else. So that is the norm in horse racing. I was not the norm. I'm never the norm. I ended up in horse racing kind of by accident, actually, because I've never been, I was never interested in horse racing. I was strictly a Grand National watcher, and that was it. I wouldn't even have said that I was ever really into horse racing. It's just that when I was 22, I started a college course, and I had to find a work experience placement. And being from Yorkshire, and knowing that a certain there was an employer who used to show jump, and that was my interest, show jumping. And I got in touch with them, not having a clue that they were into racing. And that's how I ended up there, actually, because I went to do work experience, and it was meant to be once a week. I turned up the first morning, I chucked my hat in the boot, thinking, I'm never going to get to ride, it will just be like go muck out some stables, you know. I never thought in a million years I'd get to ride. But then in the last minute, I thought, I'll just chuck your hat in. You never know, just in case. So that's what I did. And then it was go take up a horse, riding 4 lots out. That was my first morning there. And I was like, oh, wow, this is great. It was great fun. I'd never even thought about riding a racehorse before. I thought and most people think they're going to be nuts. And yeah, some of them are a bit nutty, but no more so than like normal horses, like in the normal world. Anyway, that was how I got into it. And I ended up, in the end, leaving the college course and going and working for them full time. So that was my introduction into the racing world. It didn't exactly, like, obviously, I hadn't been indoctrinated from 16. I'd worked in the normal world. And so I knew what was exploitation. I knew what was brainwashing. I knew a lot, they came down on me hard. Unfortunately for me, I'm the kind of person where if people are like kind of treating me like they have no expectations, then I think it makes me want to prove them wrong. And they were quite, I definitely got the feeling from them that they thought that, that they thought that I wouldn't be around for very long. And it's clever, they're very good at sussing people out and figuring out how to get what they want from them, because definitely the reverse psychology technique at the time, being a very headstrong, I think I was 22, 23, when I've actually, because I started the course when I was 22, but I just turned 23 shortly afterwards. Anyway, that was how I got into it. So when I started working for them full time, I don't want to get too stuck in the detail of me working for them. It's more about the industry that I want to be talking about, really. So that was how I got into racing them. So it's quite hard to talk about this because there's such a code of silence. It's of course, all this is unspoken, because that's how it is. It's a really old industry. The people in it don't want to change things because the way that things are, it works for the industry. They get away with paying staff very little money, getting a lot of work for the wages that you paid. You're not really meant to put in for overtime. Of course, legally, you're meant to be able to put in for overtime. And legally, you can put in for overtime. But I used to put in for overtime. But most people that work in racing, they don't put in for overtime. They work the overtime, and they might occasionally get an afternoon off or something. But as a general rule, they don't get their overtime or an afternoon off. Let's see, what have I put here? Right, let's have a look. I'll read my rough notes. Horse racing, ethics and exploitation of racing staff. This sport relies on exploitation, secrecy, brainwashing, intimidation, low pay, workplace bullying, code of silence, mockery for having a heart, all of which is very true. Certainly people are encouraged to not speak about things. No speaking and no thinking. Oh yeah, that's one. If you think about things openly, you get reminded that you're not paid to think. Oh my god, it's crazy. It really is. Now, I'm going to chuck my notes to one side, I think, because they're not helping. I didn't even want to really leave when I started my college course. I wanted to do the course and work part-time. But of course, they couldn't have me do that because I wrote them a letter, saying what I wanted to do. Bear in mind, I will be 40 before I know it. It's only 3 years away. And you can't work on minimum wages in such a hard job forever. So yeah, I'm guilty of realizing that I had to do something different because you can't do the same thing forever. I can't afford to do the same thing forever. So it's quite selfish of me to carry on. I've carried on working in racing for so long, really, because I definitely feel like my mum got this knock-on stress effect of that, because if anything would go wrong, for example, I mean it hasn't, but if anything had gone wrong in my house or sometimes in my car, I'd have to borrow some money off her and pay her back later, because at the end of the day, you don't get paid enough money to really save anything. You're living hand to mouth, and I don't think that's fair at my age to be living where you have. My mother would always be thinking, I mean, she'd never say this, but I'm sure that she'd never be able to properly relax, because she'd probably be thinking, oh, well, what if anything was to happen, So it's not a fair way for anyone to live. Part of the reason why they condone their low wages is because if you were living on the yard, then actually the wages aren't so bad, because you would have no rent, no bills. Basically. So your wages aren't so bad if you're living on the yard. The only thing is that these days, a lot of the people that lived on the yard are paying rent, because if you're living in they've got these mobile homes there. If you're living in those, you don't pay any rent. But if you're living in these houses, then you immediately would be paying 50 quid a week back out of your wages to them. So, what at one point in time, many years ago, was, if you lived there you were kind of better off. As time went by, that's changed. So there's not actually that many people there who aren't paying any rent, who are getting that perk from the wages. And trust me, to get that perk from those wages, you have to live a really, really hard existence. It is no picnic living in those mobile homes. They're not really nice new modern mobile homes. They're the kind of mobile homes where you've all got very little, if everyone has too much switched on all at once, then the fuse box trips and everyone gets plunged into darkness. If it's winter time and it's cold, then you have to leave the taps running so that it doesn't freeze up the water. We've had mobile homes burning down. We've had people nearly getting gassed because they were leaking out carbon monoxide. Trust me, it's no picnic taking that perk. Plus, they've got you by the shorts and curlies if you're living on the yard, because you're not ever leaving work. You're pretty much on beck and call. So I never lived on the yard. I always took the option of having to be more skinned for the privilege of getting to leave work. Anyhow, moving on from that. I don't really want to be talking about where I was working. It's just a personal thing. This is across the board. This is not in any way, shape or form just where I was working. In fact, where I was working wasn't as bad as some places. I have worked in other places in other yards. And for me, where I was working was definitely the lesser evil. It really was. So I'm not like in any way slating the people I worked for. It's the industry as a whole, and everything that goes on. It's how the industry works, and um, nobody's going to question that too much. Nobody wants to rock the boat. There's a system, and that system works, and so nobody's willing to be a forward thinker and change things. Treat the staff well, or I don't really get it. Well, I do get it because they don't want the staff to have like too much confidence or self-worth. It's definitely like a system which is steeped on, um, treating people. So there's, like I said at the start, it's very hierarchical. I can't say that word. Oh God. They don't mind like having a couple of people on the yard who get to get a little bit more power. They'll be like head lads or assistant trainer or whatever. Oh, there's a spider running across my floor. It's okay though. It's only a normal spider. It's not huge or anything. But it has just knocked my train of thought. Oh God, I'm struggling with this. Hierarchical. Right, racing industry as a whole. Yeah, I could never really get it because for me personally, and I'm sure for plenty of other people too, if I'd have just been left to my own devices, and if I hadn't been like horribly, horribly bullied for years and years on end, then I probably would have not even ended up leaving. In a really, really roundabout way. The bullies did me a favour because I got so sick of it and so depressed and like, oh, horrible. It was really dark, really since I went back to work for them in 2010. When I used to work for them before then, there wasn't the bullying that there ended up becoming in that place. There was banter, and there was banter, and there was the same levels of control and stuff, but that came more from the top, whereas by the time I'd gone back, my bosses had taken a little bit more of a back seat with age and stuff, and allowed the people that were like scrambling up the ladder to be at the top, they were allowing them to like do the manipulation, bullying and intimidation techniques that before they used to actually do themselves. So it became a bit like the lunatics running the asylum. And the reason why I got it so hard is because most of the people that worked there wanted to do the bare minimum to get by, which actually I get now because they're so badly paid and it's such a hard job. Unfortunately for me, I'm one of these people where I'm like, if you're going to do something, you do it properly or not at all. And they're racehorses at the end of the day. They have to be fit, otherwise they're not going to go out and win races. So that really was like a problem with the lads and me, because the lads didn't really want to be doing the job properly. They wanted to be cutting corners left, right and centre. I wasn't into that, and so that made me a target, basically. That made me a target, and yeah, I suffered for that a lot. But I'm stubborn, and I refused to like feel like I was getting bullied out of the yard, rather than just like thinking to myself, Nina, why stay and fight it? Just move on with your life. Instead of thinking like that, I was like, no, I'm not getting pushed out by some bullies. I don't like bullies. I don't like bullying. And so I didn't get pushed out by the bullies, because all of that got nipped in the bud, which is of course ironic, because the bullying issues finally get sorted, and then I have to leave anyhow. So, but I think this bullying that I speak of is across the board in racing, or it seems to be. You know, the intimidation, the indoctrination. People are so brainwashed. Like, how can I go into more detail about this? Let me think of an example to give. All right then. This is petty in my mind's eye, but it's just an example of, like, maybe not the best example, but where I worked, we used to finish late quite often riding, and the people that were on the yard would finish early because technically we were paid till 1 o'clock, but you'd normally feed at 12:30. If the yard was done, you could feed the horse at 12:30. As soon as the horse was fed, you could go. Done. Now, if you were riding 5 lots, quite often you wouldn't get finished till 1 o'clock. That's when everything was going to plan. You'd be finished at 1. But the plus side was that if you only had 4 lots, you'd be finished at 12:30 and gone. So they decided to, like, change the rules a bit so that nobody was meant to really be able to leave till 1 o'clock, so that it would be a bit more, well, the way they were seeing it was so that it was fairer. Which, yes, on one hand it would be fairer, but from my perspective it's like, yeah, that means that if you get 4 lots, you're not having the perk of getting to leave early, because it's going to always be 1 o'clock type thing. And I just thought it's really ridiculous, just leave it as it was, because at the end of the day, like I said, then you can enjoy the perk if you only have 4 lots. But, oh no, all the other lads were like, thinking, oh no, if we're going to have to be riding until 1 o'clock, that nobody should be able to get to leave until we're finished, kind of thing. I thought it's kind of ridiculous. And another, like, these are silly things. I can't think of anything like major. But like, if you want to be a stable jockey for a yard, you have to go and ride out for free. But in exchange, you do get given the rides. Now, that's obviously an expected thing, which all of the jockeys who want to be a stable jockey somewhere, they all do this. Now, in the summertime, when there's hardly any horses in, and you're only riding out like a couple of lots a morning, of course you don't need to have the stable jockey drive like over 100 miles to come and ride out 2 lots. But yet they would expect you to do that. And to me, it's just like crazy. Like, why? This is going downhill, isn't it? Because I'm like totally losing the point of this. Well, I've just not given any good examples, and they're making it sound so petty. So anyway, when I handed my notice in, I don't think I will be talking in my talk about racing, because it's incredibly difficult to give a perspective which makes any sense to anybody outside of the world. Like, seriously, they run things from... Alright, so you're 16 years old and you want to be a jockey. So what they do is they... nobody really makes it as a jockey unless they come from a racing background. But most of the lads that work in racing go into it because they want to be jockeys, and they don't know that you only make it if you're from a racing background. But there might be the occasional exception to the general rule, but the general rule is, unless you are from a racing background, you're not going to make it in racing. You're not going to get a chance. You might get what I call pity rides once a blue moon, where they'll chuck you they'll chuck you a ride to keep your interest going so they can carry on exploiting you. Because you see, if you want to be a jockey, you are going to get exploited more than anyone else on the place because they have so much power over you. To become a jockey, you have to be like their little bitches. Literally, like you'll have to work ridiculous overtime and not put in for it. So if you're going racing in the summertime and it's evening racing, you might not get back till 2 a.m, and they will expect you to either be out at 7 a.m, like everyone else, or if you get back really late, then you'll get like till 9, start at 9 instead. When everybody else finished at 5:30 the day before, you're like finishing at 2:30 in the morning, and you're getting till 9 o'clock. I mean, hello, like how's that right? How does that make any sense? So yeah, like they expect so much from you. They are never going to turn around and say to you, you're not going to ever be a jockey. They'll say it behind your back, but they won't say it to your face. Why would they do that when they get everything from you? They take your dreams from you and they keep you hanging on thinking that you can make your dreams come true. But you're never going to get some dreams to come true. Like, seriously. They don't care. All they care is getting the work from you. Because they need workers, obviously. And it's not a fair system where they're going to get workers because they're paying, like, wages which are going to encourage people to work there. So they have to go for the illusionary techniques where people think that they're going to have a career and that all the hard work will end up paying off because they're going to be jockeys. They're going to be raking it in. Like, first off, not many jockeys actually rake it in. Second off, even if you do make it as a successful jockey, you have got a limited lifeline. I mean, a limited career. How many jockeys actually, well, first off, how many jockeys actually get enough rides to really be like breaking even? Because these days with fuel prices being so high and the amount of mileage they have to drive, unless you're getting regular rides, you aren't going to be breaking it even. Anyway, so yeah, out of all these young lads, unless they come from a racing background, I would say probably 10% of them might get rides. And out of that 10%, most of them will be getting what I call pity rides. Like, a bit like being chucked, yeah, it's a pity ride, you know? They can see that the lads are starting to get disheartened. They can see the lads are starting to think they're not going to make it as jockeys. So they give them a ride on a crap horse, and they give them a ride and reignite their passion, reignite their interest, so they can start the cycle all over again. And I should add, as a general rule, most people that end up in horse racing are not really, as a general rule, they're not the brightest, academically wise. They'll be street smart kind of thing. But even if they're street smart, if they've got a dream and they want to make it in horse racing, they are not necessarily going to realise what is happening to them psychologically. I mean, this is clever. Brainwashing's clever. They don't just do it overnight to you. And if you join a yard as a young lad or lass, and everybody else is already indoctrinated in the system, you are quickly going to, well, A, you're going to think that's your expected behaviour, that's how you're meant to behave. everyone else is doing it. So you are going to either fit the mold, or if you can't do that, then you're going to leave. So the people that end up staying are fitting the mold. I am guilty of fitting the mold. The slight difference was that I knew that it was going on and I hated it. But, oh my God, I ended up doing it. It's a bit different with the women in racing because you're being exploited for your love of horses. The lads are being exploited because they want to be jockeys. The women are being exploited for their love of horses. For me, that's how they got me. That's how come now, 6 weeks down the line, it's like I can only compare how it is for me now to when I split up with my ex of nearly 10 years, and it was a tough time. And I'm kind of at that stage now where I'm starting to feel better, but if I see any, oh God, I can't even look at any of the pictures of I haven't even been to see my favourite horse, my mare, because the only way that I'm like dealing with this is by kind of like trying to keep my heart as protected as possible by not really opening myself up to all the wounds. And it's horrible. It's horrible because I'm like on one hand desperate to go see her, but on the other hand desperate to not re-trigger myself back into despair and despair basically, and guilt and depression and all the rest of it. I've got to be able to function. I've got to be able to do this course. It's only like 7 months and I'm already 6 weeks into it. I've got to be able to do my work. And if I'm like in the pits of despair and depression like I was when I first started the course, then I can't do anything because I'm coming home, putting my PJs on and sleeping, because that is what you do when you're mega depressed. Alright, I might be able to go outside and like laugh and joke and put a front on enough to be able to do the course. But if inside you feel so wounded and so damaged and so traumatized, you can't do your work. And so I'm at the point now where I can do my work. I can come home and I'm feeling okay, which, trust me, I'm happy with that. But it's a very, 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 very delicate line. And desperate as I am to see the horse, which, start crying just even talking about it. I can't risk it at this second in time. Heartbreaking as I used to say. I wish that I could remember where I was going with that. Oh right, yeah, I was talking about how with the women it's a bit different because they have you by the heartstrings. So that's how I mean, there isn't that many girls who stay in racing beyond about early 20s, because most women end up settling down and having kids. There's reasons, which I'm not going to go into them all now. There's reasons why I ended up doing things differently and staying in racing for so much longer. I mean, one of them actually being the fact I'm not going to be having any kids. But anyhow, it's a different story, isn't it? I remember when I split up with my ex and I was at the same stage as what I'm at now with the horses, where I was feeling like loads better and everything was like kind of starting to get better in my life. Because you see, when you've been with someone for like nearly 10 years, it's a long time. It's a long time. Anyhow, then I saw him in town. I hadn't seen him since we split up. And I saw him. I hadn't seen him or spoken to him. And I saw him in town. And everything came flooding. Like, it's the weirdest thing. Unless you've been in that situation where you have been, like, kind of in love and stuff, which, I mean, obviously I loved him. We were together a long time. And then when you split up, you like protect your heart. You don't necessarily realize you've done it until you see the person or whatever it is again, and everything comes, all the emotions come flooding back in. It's the weirdest thing. It's horrible actually. It like brings everything flooding back. And anyhow, so this is why I haven't been to see her, because I know it's going to be like, on one hand lovely to see her, but then on the other hand it's going to be like desperately sad, you know. I am going to go see her actually next week, because I'm off college for the week, and I've decided like no matter what happens I'm going to go see her then. I've got to, because it's getting to the point now where it's getting ridiculous. I want to go see her like every weekend, really. I just had to like I said, be careful. Anyway, let's move on from me like going on about that from that aspect. So yeah, the indoctrination and exploitation, and it does, you know, it works. The system works. People end up basically becoming really brainwashed into the way that world is. It's really sad. It's kind of like quite embarrassing for me to admit it, because, you know, obviously I'm not excluding myself. I might have been aware, but I was still doing it. And I mean, I think that when I handed my notice in, well, I didn't exactly hand it in. I wrote them a letter explaining that I needed to go to college and I needed to start to think about my future, because, you know, obviously I'm not getting any younger and I can't do it forever. Yeah, I knew my course was only 3 days a week, so I really wanted to work the other three. I didn't want to work the other 4 days a week, but I did want to work the other 3 days a week, and then have one day off. Although with hindsight, I probably could have worked 4 days a week, but that's by the by. And I really so stupidly did think that they were going to say, yeah, you can do that. And instead, I got told it was either or, you can't do both. So that was that. I had to make a choice. And obviously, I chose to leave because, well, it was never negotiable from my perspective. Maybe they thought that I wouldn't. I think they thought I wouldn't leave, to be honest. I think they thought, no, she won't leave a horse, you know. She's like, not going to do it. And I really wish I could have like not left, but I was also mad because, you know, it's hurtful like to give so much of your life to multimillionaires, and then it wasn't even like they said, look, do you want a pay rise? Which is a good thing, because that actually would have made it harder if they'd have done any of that. They got out of me like a managerial person on the same wages as everyone else, someone they could trust and everything, but pay the same wages as someone who's 21 and just started working for them. Crazy, isn't it? Anyhow, getting back to the point, what else was I going to say? All right, so when I gave my leaving date, and I was definitely going, that was that, and they knew, right, well, she's definitely is going to do this, she's definitely going to go, rather than just think, oh, fair enough, you know, oh, they got mega paranoid. And now I always knew all along the reason why they wouldn't let me work part-time for them and go to college was because doing that would potentially allow other people on the yard to think that if Nina can go to college and potentially go to uni, then maybe we could too. And so it was ridiculous, because we were all at different places in our lives. Like, I'm like 20 years older than some of the people that work there. the closest person in age to me was the assistant trainer, who is 7 years younger than me, I think, or maybe 5 years younger than me. And even he's, well, anyway, the thing is, he's not ever going to do this either. So, not only that, but I hadn't told anybody any of these plans. I kept it all to myself. Because I knew they'd be paranoid about me rocking the boat. And whilst my higher self thought it would be, the best thing would be just to cut the cords and leave properly, my more human self, that is desperately attached to those horses and desperately in love with them. And not only that, but physically, like sport wise, I like to be fit. There's a million and one reasons why it would have been a really good thing. Oh, and I need to work. I mean, seriously, at the moment, I've got no job. Like, yeah, great. But it's not, because no job means no wages. And seriously can't afford that. Like, how on earth am I meant to cope? Anyway, yeah. So, obviously, it would have been better for me to have worked like part-time for them. And obviously that never happened, because obviously they were too scared that I was going to rock the boat. Now, I never did. But what they did was, after I'd given hand in my notice in date, they then started to try and fall out with me, basically. I have definitely released some work where I've spoken about this a bit, and I'm not going to go into loads of detail now. Just going to say, basically, they tried every tactic in the book to alienate, to cause an argument. And that didn't work, because I ended up writing them a letter. I was really hurt, that she was trying to accuse me of trying to cause the staff to strike. Oh, all sorts of stuff, which, whilst I can't deny it, would have been kind of cool if I had been doing any of those things. I really couldn't, even if I had wanted to be like that. Couldn't. I want to go and see my horse, They still got me by the short and curlies, really, because even doing this is like a majorly risky thing from my perspective, because, like, I am sitting here discussing the darker sides of racing and the mind control elements, or I might not be doing a very good job of it, but that's what I'm trying to do. I have nothing to lose on one hand, but on the other hand, I do have things to lose. I don't want things to be so that I can't go and visit the horses. I know I haven't been yet, but that's because of how hard it's been and how like fragile everything's been and fresh and wounded and all the rest of it. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to want to go and see them. So anyway, look, at some point in time, people need to start like speaking about this, and maybe it's a bit selfish of me that I haven't really I'm like putting like certain elements of my own wants and needs before like what's really right, which is really someone should be shedding as much light on this as possible, because everyone's keeping quiet and nobody's like really realising, and even the people that do realise, like myself, are still keeping quiet for the most part. It just allows the system of abuse and control to continue. So, really, there does need to be like a point where enough's enough, and people start to like speak out and stick together. And that revolution that I got accused of being like of starting yeah, maybe at some point in time I should start that revolution and just get on with it. Um, we'll see. Like, we'll see what the future holds. I think I'm gonna wrap this up. I'll just have a little peek at my thing, which I've not even like read. Oh, oh, that was spooky. Um, it was just the shadow from this going across the camera. Because I'm using the camera on the computer, which I never used before. It's not the best, but anyway, it'll be alright. Look, I've not really spoken about anything on this list because I've touched on it. You know, when I left, they didn't even say goodbye to me. They didn't say thanks. They didn't say nothing. They went on a holiday. They went to the sales the day, my last day. They were going on holiday the day afterwards. And I'd left the day before the pool money was due. We get paid pool money every 3 months. And they didn't give me any pool money. They should have given me the pool money. I'd like totally worked for it. Nothing. Like, now, fair enough. They might have thought we don't need to say bye to her because we'll see her. She'll be up to see to see a horse and stuff. But yeah, I just really felt like they were like actually really mad that I hadn't taken any of the bait. That instead of taking the bait, they were trying to like hand out when they were trying to blacken my name and stuff. Because I found out after leaving. I mean, I knew it was going on, but I found out, I had it confirmed after leaving, just the extent, like, they've gone around owners and stuff and been saying stuff like, not just, why didn't they just say the well, we know why they didn't say the truth, but seriously, like, why didn't they say, oh, she's getting quite old and, like, she's got other priorities, like, in her life now, but instead it was like they had to make out that we weren't getting on, and that was why I was leaving. Well, whatever. Like, I suppose they have reasons to be paranoid. I think they know that I know. They know that I know what goes on. And they know that I don't agree with it. I mean, they know that because it's not hard for people to know. Just because I kept quiet, it didn't mean I ever agreed with it. And said that, yeah, I suppose they have reasons to be worried. I was hurt because I didn't think it was justified for them to be any of the ways they were being. But I suppose, I can see why they'd be quite concerned about me leaving. And it's a shame, but it is what it is, isn't it? Alright, look, this has gone on for so long. I'm really sorry. It's so hard to talk about all this stuff without like rambling in places, and it's really hard to stick to the point, especially when it's also personal. Anyway, yeah, so I'm going to sign this out and I'll upload it and then cringe. But what time is it anyway? God, it's 5 o'clock in the morning. Well, I have been asleep most of the evening, so it's not that bad. It's just, I'm getting quite tired anyway now, so switch this off and I'm gonna go to bed. And at least it won't take forever to upload because it's just on the rubbish computer. Like, something just whistled. Yeah, it's just on the computer setting. Alright, I'm gonna go. I don't know where my cat is, she's gone somewhere, so I can't even have her wave at you. I'll wave instead, and Ben's not here either, so that's that. Bye bye. Oh, Ben's coming next week, so I'll be able to do some videos. Alright then, I'm gonna switch this off now. Alright then, bye bye.